In the Shadow of Deceit. This is a work of fiction and does not draw from real events. The murky underbelly of human nature, a labyrinth of hidden motives and dark secrets, unfolds in a narrative that straddles the eerie stillness of a rain-soaked English night and the fevered pace of an unraveling mystery. In the heart of Brighton, England, the temperate sea air mingled with whispers of old conspiracies that stretched back decades, if not centuries. It was here, amid both elegant Georgian facades and the creeping decay of abandoned warehouses along the quayside, that Robert and Elizabeth Wilkinson, a middle-aged couple whose lives had settled into a quiet rhythm of routine and the comfort of shared history, found themselves drawn into a sinister game they never imagined existed. Robert, a broad-shouldered gentleman whose salt and pepper hair spoke of experience rather than age, had always been a beacon of pragmatism and calm. Elizabeth, with her keen perception and equally weathered grace, was a woman whose soft smile belied an implacable strength. Together they had navigated life's tribulations for over 20 years, raising children, surviving heartbreak, and overcoming personal demons. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the unsettling series of events that began on an unusually overcast afternoon in early autumn. The day had taken an unexpected turn when a stray letter, embossed with a cryptic emblem and addressed in a careful, looping script, arrived at the Wilkins' modest townhouse in Hove. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she unfolded the aged paper, its yellowed edges and faded ink hinting at secrets long obscured by time. "Robert," she called softly, the sound of her voice tinged with both concern and curiosity. "There's something odd in the post today." Robert's careful eyes scanned the text as he joined her at the kitchen table. "It's from someone claiming to know things about us, things that shouldn't be known," he murmured. The letter accused them of involvement in a crime that had apparently rocked the city decades earlier, a scandal that was more rumor than record. The accusations were couched in allegory and half-truths, and at first, they seemed so implausible as to be laughable except for the bitter undercurrent that spoke directly to their hidden past. That night, while the rain drummed incessantly on the leaded windows, the couple pored over every scrap of their shared history, confronting memories long buried and questioning how their well-ordered lives could be intertwined with a conspiracy of such monstrous proportions. In the days that followed, the world around Robert and Elizabeth took on an unsettling cast. Their trusted neighbors in Hove began to offer sympathetic glances, as if privy to some unspoken truth about them. In the local pub, hushed conversations dwindled to wary nods and fleeting whispers about the Wilkins curse, a malediction born of guilt and etched in the collective psyche of people who rarely trusted fate. Even the city's venerable architecture seemed haunted through narrow lanes and foggy alleys, a menacing silence seemed to stretch, pregnant with the weight of impending revelation. One chilly evening, as dusk settled over the city with its customary blend of melancholy and menace, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man in a worn trench coat, his eyes dark and unreadable, reminding one of a detective from a bygone era. "I'm Detective William Harper," he announced in a measured tone, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "I need to speak with you about a cold case that was never truly solved." Robert and Elizabeth exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if this intrusion was fate's response or evidence of an emerging nightmare. As the detective stepped into their living room, his presence seemed to fill every corner with an ineffable gravity. Harper explained that a decades-old series of disappearances had been loosely linked to the Wilkins family, a connection that had been suppressed by those in power. His words carried both the air of inevitability and the chill of a winter storm. "There's something very complicated about your past," he said quietly, "something that forces you to reckon with decisions made in desperation and guilt." Elizabeth's eyes, usually tempered with understanding, now glistened with a nascent terror. "Are you saying that we're responsible?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Harper's reply was measured. "I'm saying that you might know more than you think and that someone wants the truth to come out, no matter the cost." Over the following weeks, Robert and Elizabeth found themselves reluctantly entangled in Harper's investigation. Their once peaceful routine gave way to clandestine meetings in foggy backrooms of old pubs, and midnight rendezvous on deserted piers overlooking the churning sea. In an atmosphere that was at once oppressively familiar and alarmingly alien, every shadow and half-glimpsed figure became suspect, every creak in the old house an echo of their collective past. At first, the mystery seemed an elaborate fabrication. Yet as Harper unearthed records in locked file cabinets and obscure police logs, the couple's deepest secrets began to surface with a force as formidable as the Atlantic tide. Robert recalled a long-forgotten encounter with a man in a black suit who had, during a business trip to London, hinted at a connection between his family and a network of covert operatives. Elizabeth, too, harbored memories of whispered conversations in a shadow-filled corridor at St. Bartholomew's Hospital in central London, words about an arrangement that could not be undone. The investigation took a darker turn when the anonymous letter reappeared, accompanied by a series of cryptic photographs that depicted scenes of decay and foreboding. One image showed a fog-bound cemetery at midnight near Brighton Pier, another showed a derelict seaside mansion with boarded-up windows and a sense of palpable menace. In these photographs, a figure, one who bore a striking resemblance to Robert, gazed disconsolately from a distance, as if burdened by memories too painful to confront. "This is insane," Robert muttered late one evening as he examined one photograph under the dim light of his study. "How can my face be in a picture taken years ago in the middle of nowhere? I've never even been to that mansion." Elizabeth's reply was measured but full of dread. "There are pieces to this puzzle you refuse to acknowledge, Robert. We must face them before they come back to haunt us entirely." Determined to confront the darkness at the heart of their predicament, the couple retraced the steps of their youth, venturing into locations that had once been trivial snapshots in the album of their lives. They drove from Brighton to London in an old, reliable car that had seen better days, its engine groaning like an ancient sentinel as it made its way along the winding country roads. Their destination was a small, unassuming flat in Camden, where Robert had spent several years as an associate of a prominent businessman rumored to have ties with influential underground figures. In the cramped living space of the flat, obsolete relics of a turbulent past were strewn about, faded photographs of unsmiling friends, confidential letters crammed in battered briefcases, and a journal with entries that hinted at clandestine meetings and desperate bargains. Exploring the flat, Elizabeth discovered a sealed envelope hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Inside, she found a handwritten note, its ink smeared by time. "Some debts are never repaid even in life or death." The note was accompanied by a detailed list of names and locations, including a reference to a remote hamlet near Salisbury. As dusk gave way to the enveloping darkness of the night, the couple felt the oppressive weight of history bear down on them once more. "This list, it's like a map to our sins," Robert said, his voice trembling at the sheer significance of the discovery. Elizabeth held his hand tightly as she replied, "We have no choice but to follow it, Robert. We must find out why our past is clawing its way into our present." The journey led them into the heart of England's countryside, where the landscape was dotted with ancient trees and forgotten monuments, and the winds always whispered secrets of long-buried crimes. Arriving in a small village near Salisbury, the Wilkins were greeted by a palpable silence, as if the inhabitants were guarding a dark secret. In a narrow lane lined with ivy-covered cottages, they met Claire Morgan, an enigmatic local historian whose eyes betrayed a lifetime of silent sorrow. "Your surname, Wilkinson, is woven into the fabric of our village's history," Claire confided during a hushed conversation over cups of steaming tea. "There was an incident decades ago, one that involved betrayal and loss. Few dare mention it, but those of us who remember know that some truths are better left hidden. And yet, they always resurface." Her words resonated with the unspoken fears of Robert and Elizabeth, stirring up a torrent of questions that demanded answers. In the following days, as storm clouds gathered over the rolling hills, the atmosphere in the village grew increasingly foreboding. Strange figures were seen lurking near the ancient stone circle on the outskirts of town, and local legends of ghostly apparitions began to re-emerge. The couple's investigation took on an almost supernatural dimension as inexplicable events began to disrupt their attempts at rational inquiry. One night, while staying in a creaking inn on the edge of the village, Elizabeth awoke to the sound of hushed footsteps outside their door. "Robert, did you hear that?" she whispered urgently. Robert, ever the protector, crept to the door and opened it a crack. In the dim corridor, a silhouette dissolved into the darkness, leaving behind only the lingering scent of damp earth and regret. "It's as if our past isn't finished with us yet," he said, his voice a mix of determination and unease. As they delved deeper into the murky mystery, evidence began to indicate that a powerful network of conspirators, operating long in the shadows of British society, might have orchestrated the entire setup to silence those who knew too much. The couple discovered coded messages hidden within old news articles and overheard suspicious conversations between well-dressed strangers in the backrooms of high-end clubs in London. Every new discovery was like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle reassembled to form a picture too horrifying to comprehend fully. It was not simply about a financial impropriety or a rash of misfortunes, it was about a carefully contrived cover-up that stretched its tendrils into the upper echelons of power, where loyalty and betrayal danced in equal measure. One particularly disconcerting evening, during an impromptu meeting at a smoke-filled tavern in Soho, Robert and Elizabeth found themselves face-to-face with Martin Reed, a sharp-witted and worldly man whose affiliation with the underground was well known among London's discreet circles. "You're in deeper than you know," Martin warned over the clatter of glasses and murmurs of clandestine deals. "Sometimes the past isn't something you can outrun, it follows you like a shadow, and sooner or later, it will claim what it believes it's owed." When pressed for details, Martin only cryptically referred to the debt of betrayal, and vanished into the throng of patrons as silently as he had appeared. His words lingered, filling the corners of their consciousness with dread and an almost fatalistic acceptance that, perhaps, the forces arranged against them were inevitable. Back in Brighton, as the relentless rain washed over the city's cobbled streets, Robert pored over every scrap of evidence they had gathered. Late into the night, amidst the scratch of pen on paper and the rustle of old documents, a pattern began to emerge. Each clue, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was connected by a single, recurring motif of betrayal and retribution. The revelations were unsettling. Memories of a secret meeting in a fog-blanketed park by the Brighton Pier, a conversation between Robert and a mysterious benefactor, and even a brief encounter with a man bearing a striking resemblance to Elizabeth, all pointed toward an event so catastrophic that it had been meticulously hidden beneath layers of denial and obscurity. In one of the more disturbing incidents, the Wilkins received a call late one rainy night. The voice on the other end was distorted and desperate, reciting fragments of conversations that Robert had long struggled to remember. "You owe a debt, the past is unforgiving," it hissed before the line went dead. Elizabeth clutched the phone tightly, her eyes welling up as fragments of long-suppressed guilt and regret surged forward. "Robert, what have we allowed to fester in our lives?" she implored, her voice trembling with a mix of remorse and fear. Robert's own heart pounded as he recalled the hidden chapters of his past, the choices he made in youth under duress, the deals struck in the shadows of financial ruin and personal despair. It was as if the past, though buried under layers of normalcy, was clawing its way back into their lives, demanding retribution. Uncertainty, paranoia, and a sense of inexorable doom began to digitize every detail of their surroundings. Every encounter was laden with double meanings. Every familiar face seemed to flicker with hidden agendas. In quiet moments at home, the couple would sit side by side in silence, each lost in the labyrinth of their thoughts and memories. Elizabeth would sometimes trace patterns on the windowpane with her fingertips, as though the condensation could reveal hidden messages. Robert, meanwhile, stared out towards the grey sea, where even the restless waves seemed to murmur the secrets of a forgotten era. Their once reassuring routine had transformed into a disquieting vigil over their own souls, as the investigation threatened not only to expose hidden crimes but also to shatter the fragile facade they had spent years trying to maintain. Desperation mounted as the tangled web of deceit drew them further into a perilous confrontation with a network whose reach extended into the corridors of power. Amid mounting evidence and a series of increasingly alarming encounters, including a near-fatal car accident on a rain-slicked road outside Brighton and a violent confrontation in a deserted alley in Camden, the couple slowly began to piece together a conspiracy that spanned decades. Every new lead was a double-edged sword. It brought them closer to the truth but also deepened the scars of guilt they had long buried. Their journey, filled with unexpected turns and chilling encounters, was No longer just about uncovering a hidden crime, it had evolved into a desperate quest for redemption, a final reckoning with the past. One rainy afternoon, as the muted light of a November day filtered through grimy windows in a London archive, Robert discovered a series of meticulously kept diaries hidden within an unmarked box. The diaries, penned in careful, looping handwriting, belonged to his late father, a man whose life had been shrouded in as many secrets as the family name itself. Page after page revealed clandestine meetings, covert alliances, and unresolved betrayals that painted a picture of a man torn between duty and desire, honor and duplicity. Every entry was a confession, every word a ripple that disturbed the placid surface of a carefully cultivated life. Elizabeth gently placed her hand on Robert's shoulder as he read the final entry. In the end, the sins of our lineage will come calling like a shadow that never fades, no matter how fervently we try to outrun it. The realization that the darkness that haunted them was not entirely their own but part of a generational curse shook them to the core. The evidence in the diaries attracted the attention of powerful figures who had long operated behind a veneer of respectability. One fateful night, as stormy winds rattled the window panes of their modest home in Hove, a knock at the door heralded the arrival of a leather-bound envelope. Inside were photographs and a dossier that chronicled the hidden intersections of the Wilkinson family with notorious criminal circles in England and beyond. The document detailed a series of transactions and clandestine meetings in seedy Soho backrooms, opulent drawing rooms of London's high society, and even remote corners of the English countryside, all threads that wound their way back to the day when secrets were made and lives were irrevocably altered. "We must come to terms with our past, Elizabeth," Robert said solemnly as he skimmed through the dossier in the dim glow of a desk lamp. "The truth, however painful, is the only path forward." Elizabeth nodded, her resolve hardening with every passing moment of shared torment and silent understanding. The couple's pursuit of answers was met with mounting resistance. Shadows flitted across familiar streets as if orchestrated by unseen forces, and every phone call and knock on their door brought with it a renewed threat. In one harrowing encounter on an isolated stretch of road near the A27, a black SUV tailgated their car before abruptly pulling over. Two men in dark coats leapt out and silently exchanged coded words before vanishing into the night, leaving behind a sense of foreboding that would haunt them for weeks. "They're watching us," Elizabeth said, her voice trembling with the terror of being hunted. Robert responded with a quiet determination that belied his inner turmoil. "Then we must keep moving forward, until every misdeed is brought into the light." As the duo pressed on, the line between past and present blurred into a tapestry of guilt, fear, and desperation. The investigation led them to clandestine meetings in abandoned factories on the outskirts of Leeds, secret rendezvous beneath the flickering neon of Manchester's backstreets, and even a late-night confrontation in the murky depths of Glasgow's underbelly. With each new locale, the intricate network of conspiracies revealed itself in subtle details: a phone number scribbled on a crumbling wall, a recurring symbol etched into the railings of a deserted bridge, a pair of eyes that seemed to follow them through the mist. These clues, though sporadic, bound together into a narrative that was as disturbing as it was unmistakable. The legacy of betrayal was not contained to a single event, but rather was an inheritance passed down through generations, a burden that Robert and Elizabeth were now compelled to acknowledge. The tension reached a fever pitch during a fateful meeting in a small London flat, where the couple finally came face to face with the orchestrator of their suffering, a woman named Margaret Stokes. Her icy gaze and measured words exuded a dangerous authority. "You have spent years trying to forget, trying to bury your sins under the veneer of a normal life," she said, her voice cool and precise. "But the truth has a way of clawing its way into the light, no matter how deeply you hide it." Robert, his voice steeled by newfound resolve, retorted, "Tell me then, what is it that you want? Why drag our lives through this mire?" Margaret's lips curved into a wry smile as she leaned forward. "What I want isn't mine to decide," she said softly. "It is the natural outcome of debts unpaid, reputations tarnished, and promises broken. I am merely here to collect what is owed." That encounter shattered any remaining illusions that the past might be neatly compartmentalized from the present. In the days that followed, a series of violent events underscored the peril that had gripped their lives. A close friend of Robert's, Jonathan Price, was found grievously injured in a dark alley in Liverpool, his only clue a cryptic mark carved into his arm that mirrored the symbol appearing in the anonymous letters. Elizabeth, distraught by the tragic incident, confronted a wave of guilt intertwined with fear. "Did we play a part in this, Robert?" she pleaded one somber evening as she watched rain cascade down their living room window. Robert's voice was quiet but resolute. "I don't know, Elizabeth, but we must uncover the truth before more lives are lost." In the midst of chaos, moments of tenderness and clarity emerged. In one quiet, rain-dappled moment on the cliffs near Dover, Robert and Elizabeth found solace in each other's arms, the relentless wind carrying away whispers of regret and betrayal. "Remember when we believed our past was nothing more than distant memories?" Robert murmured, his eyes fixed on the turbulent sea below. Elizabeth's response was both painful and affirming as she replied, "Our past is part of who we are, but it does not have to define us. We have the power to choose our future, even if that path is lit by the fires of our mistakes." Their embrace was a silent pact, a promise to confront the inexorable shadows of yesterday even as they braced themselves for the unknown horrors of tomorrow. Continuing their relentless pursuit, the couple formed uneasy alliances with others who had been similarly wronged by the long-standing web of conspiracies. Among these was a resourceful investigative journalist named Daniel Barnes, who had uncovered several inconsistencies in the historical records of the criminal underworld. Daniel's connection to the case was deeply personal, and his fervor for unmasking the truth lent a renewed energy to the investigation. "There's a theory that the conspiracies you've stumbled upon have roots in ritualistic practices and secret societies," Daniel confided during a late-night meeting in a rundown London cafe. "We are dealing not just with monetary debts or personal vendettas. This is about power, about control over fate itself." His words, laced with the grim certainty of one who had seen too much, added another layer to the profound complexity of their investigations. Each new revelation heightened the stakes, pressing them ever closer to a confrontation that promised no sanctuary. The dark corridors of forgotten archives in Oxford, the storm-racked warehouses along Liverpool's docks, and the dimly lit backrooms of Manchester's opulent hotels all became stages for clandestine meetings, desperate negotiations, and harrowing encounters with men and women motivated by forces beyond mortal comprehension. In one nerve-wracking incident in a narrow backstreet of Birmingham, Elizabeth narrowly escaped an ambush orchestrated by figures whose faces were obscured by shadow. Racing into the cool night air, she recalled Martin Reed's cryptic warning, "Sometimes the past is unforgiving," and with that, her determination hardened even further. Every moment was a battle against an unseen enemy that threatened not just their lives, but the very essence of truth and justice. Slowly, the threads of their intertwined fates began to converge towards an inevitable climax. With every step forward, the labyrinth of deceit and secrecy revealed fresh horrors and painful recollections. In an expansive, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of Nottingham, a place that time seemed to have forgotten, Robert discovered a cache of documents linking his family to clandestine financial transactions and covert operations that spanned continents. The mansion, with its high, crumbling walls and echoing halls, served as both a tomb and a testament to the sins of the past. As Robert flipped through aging ledgers and brittle memos, a chill ran down his spine. These records, meticulously concealed and almost destroyed in a moment of panic decades ago, confirmed the extent of the betrayal that had set this chain of events into motion. In a continuous, heart-pounding narrative of shadow and light, every moment of revelation was tempered by the spectre of imminent danger. The investigation reached far beyond the familiar streets of Brighton and London, leading them to remote corners of the British Isles, from the solitary moors of Scotland to the wind-swept cliffs of Northern Ireland. In each location, local legends and historical grievances intertwined to form a tapestry of collective memory, one that held echoes of ritualistic punishments, ancestral grudges, and the inexorable pull of fate. In the midst of this swirling chaos, Robert and Elizabeth clung to each other, drawing strength from their unshakable bond as they confronted the terrors of their past and the uncertainty of their future. With the conspiracies coalescing around them like predators circling their prey, the couple's journey culminated in a dramatic, claustrophobic confrontation in a derelict mill near the outskirts of Manchester. In that decaying structure, buried deep in the labyrinth of abandoned corridors and echoing machinery, the true mastermind behind the decades-old vendetta revealed himself, a man known only as Edward Collins. His steely eyes and cold demeanor betrayed years of calculated malice. "You've been chasing ghosts," Edward sneered as he circled them like a vulture. "But every ghost has a history and every history demands its due." In that suffocating darkness, Robert's voice rang out with defiant clarity, "We are not the ghosts of our past. We are survivors, ready to break free of the chains that bind us." Elizabeth, her gaze blazing with both fury and sorrow, added, "No more. Tonight, the truth shall be set free, even if it destroys everything we once knew." The ensuing confrontation was a maelstrom of violence, desperate confessions, and a battle not only for survival but for the reclamation of one's identity. As tendrils of smoke and sparks filled the air, the resolution of old betrayals collided with the raw truth of the present. Edward's panicked attempts to silence the revelations ended in a chaotic torrent of shattered glass, crumpled documents, and the final, irrevocable admission of guilt. In the aftermath, as the dust settled amid the ruins of that forsaken mill, Robert and Elizabeth found themselves staring at the fragile remnants of their lives torn yet unbowed. Their journey had been marked by relentless pursuit, teetering on the brink of despair, but now, in that quiet moment of clarity, the weight of the past began to lift. The fallout of that fateful night reverberated throughout every facet of their existence. While the legal and personal repercussions would take years to untangle, the unwavering determination to forge a new future became the bedrock of their existence. With the truth finally exposed, they began to rebuild the shattered fragments of their lives. In the reflective calm of an early winter morning in Hove, as the first light of day broke through a grey sky, they vowed to embrace honesty over secrecy, courage over fear, and love over despair. Every scar, every painful memory, was now a testament to their resilience and an indelible reminder that, in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit could still choose hope. Now, as the waves crashed relentlessly against the Brighton shore and the winds carried whispers of bygone regrets, Robert and Elizabeth walked hand in hand along the pebbled promenade. Their eyes, once clouded by doubt and haunted by shadows, now shone with the quiet certainty of survivors who had risen from the depths of their own personal horrors. The ghosts of their past had been laid to rest, and though the future remained uncertain, they had taken their first decisive steps toward a life free of the chains of deceit and guilt. The journey through betrayal, mystery, and relentless pursuit of redemption had transformed them irrevocably. In their struggle, they had confronted not only the sinister machinations of a hidden criminal network but also the darker corners of their own souls. Each conversation, every breathless moment of terror, and each spark of love in the midst of despair had stitched together a rich tapestry of survival, one that was as painful as it was beautiful. In the fading light of that long, arduous road, the truth, though harsh and unyielding, was now an open wound that had begun to heal. Surrounded by the evidence of their own past and the monumental efforts they had undertaken, Robert and Elizabeth knew there was still work to be done. They would stand vigilant as long as the forces of deceit lingered in the shadows, upholding the righteousness of truth against the crushing burden of historical lies. Their shared resolve, tempered in the crucible of suffering, promised that no matter how deeply one's past was buried, the light of truth would eventually force it into the open. And so, as dusk descended once more upon the familiar horizon of Brighton, blending the present with memories of a lost world, they continued onward. Their steps, though heavy with the burden of what had been, moved purposefully toward a future built upon the courage to face every consequence of their past and to challenge the dark undercurrents that once threatened their very existence. In an unyielding, continuous narrative of survival, trust, and the ultimate quest for redemption, their story remains a stark reminder that even in the darkest alleys of human experience, the faint glow of truth can guide one home. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and check the description for details on how to support my work.